All right. Welcome, everyone, to this January 8th, 2024 meeting of Budget, Capital, and Personnel. We have a full complement of legislative members today. And yes, I'm calling this meeting to order. The first order of business we have are a number of minutes from our expanded budget committee meetings last fall, as well as last December's meeting minutes. So I'm going to ask someone to move those as a group. Thank you, Rich. Can I get a second? Thank you, Amanda. Does anybody have any comments or concerns?
Can you read them aloud?
Yes. So these are the expanded budget committee minutes.
No, I didn't mean that.
Oh.
I wasn't serious.
Oh.
Maybe we could
Well,
reference the
aren't
dates.
you frisky today?
Maybe we could reference the dates, though.
Yeah, I was about to do that. I was not going to read the minutes. So we have expanded budget committee minutes from September 20th, 26th, and 27th, and October 10th, 11th, and 12th of last year, as well as our last BCP meeting on December 11th. So if there are no more wiseacre remarks or comments, are we ready to vote? All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Now, we are changing the agenda. We have a resolution to add, resolution urging support for Empire State Community College Workforce Guarantee that was sent to us by Amy Kremenick, our TC3 president. And we're going to consider that first because Amy's here on Zoom to answer our questions, and we don't want to take up too much of her time. So if I could get a motion, this is resolution ID number 12150. Thank you, Rich. Mike seconds. Amy, since you're here, I'm going to let you explain what this is all about.
All right, thank you, Deborah, and good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with all of you about the resolution, draft resolution to support the Empire State Community College Workforce Guarantee. As you know, Tompkins Cortland Community College serves both counties, Cortland and Tompkins County. We have approximately 40 majors, including several of our programs that are in high demand, high needs workforce areas, things like healthcare, technology, computer information systems, areas that are expanding rapidly across the state and certainly in our two counties. And the resolution that is before you is the centerpiece of an advocacy effort on behalf of both the New York Community College trustees as well as the New York Community College Association of Presidents to provide additional state support, base operating aid, to support these high needs, high growth areas of our workforce development needs in both of our counties. This would be programs to be able to expand healthcare programs in particular, technology-based programs, as well as to continue to grow computer science and computer information systems, which demands in those programs both for equipment and specialized faculty are great. The community colleges are all working collectively for this effort. It's a $97 million ask to the state, which would then be spread amongst all of the community colleges across the state. So we are hoping at our college, our enrollment is growing, and there's certainly a lot of interest on the part of both students and the industry in expansion of these programs, that we could garner a good sized share of this if it were to be approved at the state. But your consideration of a resolution of support is very much appreciated and necessary as we seek to have this be successful in this upcoming legislative session.
Thank you, Amy. Any questions for Amy? I mean, I think we're always on board with asking Albany for money, Amy, so not a problem. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns before we vote?
And I'd like to speak after this before Amy leaves.
Okay, so let's take a vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And you're recognized, Mike.
Thanks. Amy, thanks for being here. You know, I really want to say thanks publicly here because of the effort you make to keep us informed about things. You send out your weekly updates to your board, and I've been forwarding them to our board here. Usually has good news. Sometimes it has troubling things, but you're right out front with us to make sure we know all about it. And that's something we haven't had in the past, and I think it's a real asset for us to have that information. We are supportive of our college, and we are supportive of you as our leader of the college, and so thank you.
Well said, Mike. Thank you. Amy, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Okay, moving on. Comments from the public. Do we have any? Nope. County Administrator report. Welcome back, Lisa Holmes.
Thank you. I think my report is brief today. We are going to be considering applicants for the budget director position and hopefully beginning interviews this week. So we're pleased that we have some applicants for that position. And today's my first day back from vacation, but I'm noting on some of the updates that I received from other county administrators through NISAC. Other counties are sharing the information that they print on their tax bills to constituents that educate them about mandate costs in the budget. We do the same with a small graph, but other counties do 2 and sometimes 3 pages of information about their budget, the amount of their budget that's taken up with state mandates, as well as some other educational and informational materials for taxpayers. So it may be something that this committee and/or GO might want to consider for the coming year, and when the responses are still coming in across the listserv, but I'd be happy to share some other examples for consideration if it'd be of interest.
Thank you. Amanda, of course, has questions.
Well, I don't have a question, but that's interesting considering our discussion last week at GO with Jay Franklin about possibly moving to a triennial assessment and how to get more information to people. I mean, I think that's one of his big concerns is that, he gets blamed in assessment for raising taxes, but it has not nothing to do with him, but it's not his decision. So anything we can do to, educate people or give more information would be great. So I think we should talk more about it.
It might be helpful if we just made that pie chart a lot bigger.
Well,
I mean, I hate to add 2 or 3 pages worth of dead trees to our tax bill mailing, but I've always paid attention to that, and it has always surprised me when I'm talking to people and I say, well, you realize at least 60 cents of every dollar you pay is stuff the county has no choice over, and they're like, oh, really? So I don't know how much attention people actually pay. I wish they would pay more. Mike?
To that point, a lot of them never see the bill because it goes directly to their mortgage lender and gets paid.
Well, that's an interesting point. Maybe we need to find a way other than the tax bills to alert our taxpayers to what they're actually paying for. So more grist for the GO mill. Anything else for Lisa? All right then. Lori Scarrett, our Director of Finance.
Thank you. The only update I have is on the foreclosure process. At the legislator meeting, I told you we had 41 in the process currently, which is still true today. However, the original amount from October, beginning of October, we started with 68. I think at the ledge meeting I guessed at 58, but it was 68.
Okay. Thank you. And have we heard anything from Albany about
No, I have not.
Sorry, 68 parcels. Yeah.
All right. Any other, Mike?
You just raised that question. I think there's, at the state level, there are people that want to make a reform to the foreclosures, and there's those that don't want to make a reform to the foreclosures. I read a brief article about it, and so I expect this session of the legislature, there'll be more discussions about it. I'm thinking probably Jay is hearing more about it than the rest of us, but it's unusual. You wouldn't think there'd be a problem, but there is.
Well, I fail to understand how anybody can say we don't want to change anything. I don't think we have a choice. The Supreme Court's made it pretty clear we can't keep excess revenues from our foreclosures. The only question is what constitutes excess revenues? Do you factor out interest? Do you factor out the cost of the foreclosure process? There are lots of questions, I think, that are up in the air. It was promised last year that the state would work in cooperation with the counties to try to come up with a model for how we would move forward that would comply with the Supreme Court's ruling and also not screw the counties.
Well, I agree with what you just said. But there are a lot of counties that they don't have two-digit numbers of foreclosures. They have hundreds. And
Well, they should be a lot more concerned than we are then.
guessing that they've been looking at that as a revenue source.
Except it's apparently unconstitutional as a revenue source, so I don't know where that leaves them.
As of
In any
last
event,
year.
I did notice that the foreclosure process figured largely in NISAC's schedule for its February conference, so I guess we'll learn more then. Any other questions for Lori?
Just not to belabor it, but with it being found unconstitutional, what's the upshot of that? That excess funds would have to go back to the owner?
It's more complicated than that.
Is that kind of the direction?
Because there are some people who interpret that as requiring the counties to act much like banks do when they're foreclosed, to identify all the lien holders, prioritize them, distribute the excess proceeds according to that priority. Counties are not set up to do that, and that's expensive. So, just saying, okay, you can't keep the excess revenues from your foreclosure doesn't really begin to answer all the questions. And then there's the bankruptcy piece. Is it a taking without due compensation? Does it get kicked back into any subsequent bankruptcy? It's just a mess. So I'm sure Lori's hoping that.
No, I get that, because looking at that list, there's no doubt that a lot of those properties have multiple liens, and really the tax foreclosure is just kind of the straw
That broke the camel's back.
huh?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty complicated, Mike.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to me that our state should have to reinvent the wheel here, because apparently we were a minority of a minority of states that did it the way we do it, in which we kept all the money. I was thinking they said 20 states did it our way, but I may be wrong.
But we still have to fix it.
So, yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is there are other states that do this, and so they may have a procedure that we might be able to adopt at the state level. Would be less complicated than trying to start it from, create it from whole cloth, I guess.
Yeah, but be that as it may, if there are several states that already have procedures for distributing those excess revenues, I'm sure they're not all the same. So the question then becomes who examines them and who decides how we want to move forward in our state. I guess we'll learn more when we go to NISAC. Are you coming? Perhaps you might want to reconsider that, I don't know. Okay. Any other questions for Lori? If not, Ruby, our Commissioner of Human Resources, what's new?
Thank you. Just a brief report from Human Resources. We are wrapping up year-end tasks and communicating with departments for the beginning of the year processes to make sure we start our year on the right foot as far as personnel actions. We will be resuming discussions with the quote-unquote SMART group, the group that volunteered to assist with identifying specific objectives for the performance report for performance evaluation for direct reports. So expect to get that email tomorrow. The format has been finalized. The definitions are in there. We just need specific objectives and we can move forward.
That's great. At which point, practically all of our new people will have been here for about a year, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. I'm sure Lisa has missed being evaluated. We're getting there. We're getting there. Any questions for Ruby? Thanks, Ruby. All right, committee chair report. I do not see. Is she here?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. You're
Hello.
very dark and dismal there. Brighten up, girl.
I have COVID. That's my excuse for everything these days.
Oh, okay. I'm
and
sorry.
Anyway, I have no report from WDIC.
Okay. Well, then I guess you can crawl back to your sick bed. I'm so sorry you're ill.
Yes, thank you.
Feel better soon. All right. Well, I had added our committee goals discussion, but let's do our resolutions first, and then we can circle back to that. So we have Resolution A, appropriation from the 2024 Contingent Fund, Mental Health Association, Whole Health Department, ID 12125. Can I get that moved, please? Amanda moves, Mike seconds, and I see Frank Krupa's here to tell us about this.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. The resolution in front of you is in relation to an OTR that was presented in the 2022 cycle for 2023, which the legislature approved with one-time funding for 2 years. Unfortunately, it fell through the cracks in the process in 2023 for 2024 and was not included in the review process. So this is an opportunity for the legislature to review and act upon that OTR that unfortunately was left out of the budget process.
So we just forgot to put the second year in?
Correct.
And we have to take it out of contingent as a result? Okay. Any questions for Frank? Rich?
Comment that it's okay to use paragraphs in the memo. I found that very hard to read. It was like stream of consciousness.
Well, it's not often that we get Somerset Mom writing our memos, so consider yourself privileged. Okay, I'm sure Frank will take that to heart. Anything else? Amanda?
We did look at this at HHS also already.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, are we ready to vote? All in favor? Thank you, that's unanimous. And then our second resolution, oh, Mike?
Wondered how we can prevent something like this from happening again, slipping through the cracks. Should there be some kind of a tickler system that reminds us about these multi-year over targets, both at the department level and at the administration level or something? You're probably already thinking about this, but an $86,000, not that I'm against doing this, but it would be nice that if this hadn't happened.
I agree. Yeah, we moved most of them forward. This one got missed So we tried to help the departments not miss any of them. This one just didn't make it to the, so we do have a tickler system, we do check them. This one's for some reason didn't hit the system, so we got missed.
This rarely happens. I think given that we had a new software system and a new budget book and a lot of new going on, I can understand how this could happen, but I think your point's well taken, Mike. We should have a procedure that makes sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
Well, with the new, I will just add, if I can, with the new budget system, we will be rolling everything forward in the same system, which is not something we were able to do with the old system. So anything that's multi-year is going to show up again. We don't have to add it manually. We had to add all of those manually this year. So that might address that.
Thanks.
Clarification. So it was in the hopper. It was a 2-year.
It was indeed,
over
yes.
target. The second year didn't carry out.
That's correct.
So at the end of 2024, this isn't a continuing, is not a continuing.
Not a continuing.
Fund. Okay.
It would have to be a new,
However,
it'll be a new ask if it were.
Okay. All right. It commits us to the second year that we intended to commit to in 2022.
That's right.
Okay. Moving on, Resolution B. This ought to occasion a little more discussion than we've had on the other ones. Resolution to establish reserve funds, ID 12149. Can I get a motion, please? Amanda moves. Thank you. Rich seconds. And I'm going to let Lori and Norma lead the discussion on this one.
Thank you. So this resolution is to follow the policy that was adopted a few months back to establish reserve funds. And this is actually following the policy that was adopted and setting those funds aside in a reserve. Most of that is coming from unassigned fund balance. There is some here that are cleanup, and I'll go over those with you in a minute. If you look at the first transactional area, the chart with the numbers, you can see which ones are coming from unassigned fund balance. And then there's a couple that are, for example, the deferred revenue, the third line down. That was the money that came back from DSS, and a resolution was passed to put that money aside. We did not have a reserve policy at that time, so we didn't have a reserve to put it into. So that's taking them, we had put it in deferred revenue to set it aside, and now we'll put it in official reserve. Same with the S fund, the insurance reserve. There is some money in that insurance reserve, so we're adding some money to it to bring it to follow the policy guidelines, as well as get into the correct reserve account numbers. In total, it's reducing the unassigned fund balance here by about just over $12 million. 11 million of that was for the capital reserve. The second section that has the numbers has to do with the cash movement. All of our reserves should have a corresponding reserve account for the cash, so they should balance. Currently, those are out of balance, so this is a cleanup to not only fund the new reserves that we're establishing, but also make sure everything's in balance for the current reserves that you have. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'm happy to address them.
Mike?
So we talked about the debt reserve. Is that the capital reserve here?
So no, the debt reserve was previously funded, and thank you, I missed that point.
It's the debt service, right?
The debt service was previously funded in Resolution 2023-242 of $5,725,003.
Okay, so this is just in addition to that?
In addition to that, yes.
Thanks.
Rich?
You said the two items should balance, but they seem to be about, what, $75,000, $77,000 apart?
Yes, so as I said, the cash amounts were already out of balance. So there's $77,905.08 sitting in a reserve account that's not in the cash account. So that's the difference in the two. So we will be balanced when these happen.
These two totals don't need to balance, as I understand it.
Well, what has to happen is the total reserve balance has to equal the total cash reserve balance. And currently, there's some money sitting in the reserve, but not in the cash. That's not has to do with anything that we're doing here. So the cash piece, I'm adjusting to reflect it so that we can have both balancing. If that makes sense.
And I think we're not accustomed to seeing this second piece because Rick used to just do it behind the scenes. And Lori's trying to be very transparent and make sure we understand what she's doing. So when she runs off with a pool cabana boy, we won't wonder what happened to our money.
Say what?
Strike that. Strike that. Further question. You have two reserves here for workers' comp, one from unassigned fund balance, the other is insurance reserve. Are they being added together, or do you keep those separate because one is paying something towards insurance when we need to?
Now, they're both workers' comp reserves, and the second one, the 466,000 one, is currently sitting in the workers' comp fund in a reserve account. It just is in the wrong number, so I'm fixing the number. I'm taking it from the 863 to the 814, and then adding an additional 293,206 to it from the unassigned fund balance to get us the total of 760, which is what the 3-year spending trend for workers' comp fund has been and was what the policy stipulated that it be at.
Okay. Thanks.
Lee?
Just to be clear, with understanding it myself here, a little slow sometimes, but most of this is cleanup based on policies that were adapted through the last few months through this committee and then the legislature. My question comes back to the capital reserve. In the budget, we budgeted money toward capital projects, which presumably went into a reserve. Was it 9 million? I think where we ended up. Is that toward the center of government building?
No, that's actually what this reserve policy is doing, is actually addressing that 9 million that's been sitting in the fund balance, not tied to the capital reserve. What Lori's doing through this resolution is cleaning that up and making sure it's sitting in a capital reserve.
And are we adding a couple million to what we had expected to do in the budget?
That's, yes.
In order to meet the 10% requirement. So I guess the thing that gobsmacked me is $11 million is 10% of the local share of our capital projects. Is that right?
I don't know where you're getting the 10%.
It's a 10% of the local share of capital project expenses. So is that the $11 million?
So the 11 million came from the 9 million of estimated through the budget for, I think it was the center of government building. And then we added the 10%, which is the additional 2 million.
Oh, okay. So the center of government is something separate. So how is that complying with the policy that sets up the reserve accounts? I just want to be sure I understand. I'm not criticizing.
Yeah, I think that came from the budget. Is that correct, Norma? That 11?
Yes, the 11 came from the budget, and now I'm starting to question it myself, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, because what we're trying to do here is fund these reserve accounts consistently with what the policy required, and the policy required 10% of the local share of capital project expenses. So if I'm reading that correctly, then the local share of capital project expenses should be $110 million. Or the total of the capital project expenses should be 100.
I believe that what we're doing is funding over and above what's in the policy, because to reflect the assumptions that we've made in the capital budget, so that other assumptions aren't being made claiming that money elsewhere.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I just wanted to be sure that we understood what we were doing.
And then the 2 million is at 10% of 19 million expenses that we have in 2024.
Okay, so 9 million was budgeted in 2020, in the 2023-24 budget process, and then 2 million is basically 10% of 2024 capital. All right, got it. And then could I just ask, after we do all this, about how much we have left in ballpark? I realize we haven't had our audit yet, but what do we have left in unassigned fund balance?
Yes, so I don't have the 2023 numbers yet, but basing on the 2022 number of, we had 67.8 million in the unassigned fund balance. We reserved 5.7 million for the debt reserve. With this, 11 million for capital, the 1,187,000 for the risk, 293,000 workers' comp, 154 for unemployment, leaves us with 49,444,858, and that's based on the 2022 year-end numbers.
Okay, any more questions?
Leaves us with 49 million unassigned fund balance, and then our policies got us to where we wanted to have 25%
Correct, 25
of the expenses.
of expenditures, which would be 45,303,061. So we're still above that.
You knew what we were going to ask for,
I
right?
did.
So
They're
essentially,
painfully predictable.
so we need 45 million to meet the 25% threshold. We're going to be somewhere in the 49 entering this budget year, making these adjustments based on the policies that we've worked on over the last few months. So there's still something there.
Correct.
And then we'll know what 23 looks like somewheres after the audits, and hopefully you've got great news from sales tax and other quarters.
I hope so too.
Long, thank you.
But as I recall from our last legislature meeting, or maybe it was our last BCP
Slowing
meeting,
down.
well, it's not so much that the sales tax is slowing down, it's just that it is more closely approximating what we budgeted.
Right.
So contrary to the expectations of at least one of our number, we're not going to be up $7 million. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we vote? Ready to vote? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you all. Okay, so now I'm going to circle back to that committee goals discussion. We already discussed last month where we were in terms of progress on this year's goals. I'm hoping that the composition of this committee won't change dramatically in 2024. The leadership will, but the composition won't. So I don't know if you all feel like you want to start discussing committee goals for next year or not. Rich?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to kind of stand back and let you all decide what you'd like to work on next year.
Do you want to recap at all what we accomplished in the previous year and what you think might be outstanding, which I don't think there is much outstanding?
Well, I think we touched on just about everything that was on our list. The one piece that did kind of lag was the SMART committee, but once that committee was set up, or I don't know if that's a committee or a task force or what it is, but once that group was set up, I think we kind of delegated to that group moving forward on the direct report evaluation. So not my problem. No, just kidding. I think that Ruby and her group are probably moving that forward with all deliberate speed. And then the other piece of what we accomplished this year, in no small part due to the input we got from Lori and Lisa and Norma, was that I think we really cleaned up our county policies and pretty much baked our ongoing fiscal stability into those policies. And I thought that was really important work, and really appreciated all of your willingness to be riveted by the process. Riveting. And
Second only to GO.
well, everything's second to GO, yes. So beyond that, I really didn't have any ambitions for our committee. I feel like we accomplished what was important to me anyway, and I appreciate you coming along for the ride. And I appreciate all the help we got from finance and admin. So I kind of want to open it up to y'all and see what you might think we ought to be working on next year. Mike?
Something we need to work on every year, and we try, and that is the transparency of our whole budget and budget process for the public. And I know we have a Citizens Advisory Committee. We should take more advantage of that. And I don't know exactly what we need to do, but most people aren't going to read our budget books.
We don't even read, no, never.
Well, we read some of them.
We read some of it, but good Lord.
But, you know, maybe we need to think about, there need to be more summaries of different policies that we run across with the, through the budget process. You know, where are we? You know, our administrator is talking with department heads. Just try to put these things out so that the public knows that as much as we have to work at the budget process almost the whole year, and certainly our administration does and our finance, that people should know we are doing the work.
And maybe if they have input, they should bring it sooner rather than later, although I'm annually disappointed in how little interest our constituents seem to show in our budget process.
That's a good point, and it mystifies me, because I remember when we used to get a full house for budget hearings.
Well, now it takes the war in Gaza to do that.
Well, we actually used to have people debating what the tax rate should be or what the tax levy should be, and we'd have people coming in about various programs and over targets. We don't get that much, and maybe it's because we try to make it transparent, but or maybe they just don't care. Maybe they just are shell-shocked by our taxes. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that is laid at our feet, and how much of that is apparent disinterest on the part of our constituents. I think part of the problem is that we don't have a robust media coverage of county business, so people aren't informed. But I also think, let's face it, it's real expensive to live here. Some people are working 2 and 3 jobs. Most couples are 2-income families. They have kids. They have responsibilities. They don't have a lot of time. I don't know how to fix it. It is concerning. You know, I really sympathized the other night when Randy said he wished that we could get the kind of turnout we had about Gaza, about a local issue like affordable housing. Lee?
I think, you know, to our credit, the expanded budget process really moves us through a lot of meetings, and whether the public sits and watches that, I don't know. But
I doubt it.
It's something different than what I see, and, you know, I follow the other counties pretty closely, and Mike follows Cortland. I know he and I like to read the Cortland Standard, and they just kind of seem to throw a proposed budget out there, and 1 or 2 meetings later, it sails through without a lot of input, and that's not what we do here. I'm comparing the my property tax bill, obviously, in Groton versus Cayuga County and Genoa, and noticed Cayuga County, they got a little different equalization rate right now. I know they're not as up to speed on assessments as we tend to be, but they're at almost $8 a thousand with their property tax rate, and I think Cortland County's sitting at, what, $15 a thousand for a county tax rate. It's crazy.
I'm not sure, but
over there.
But what's their tax base?
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
town rates are significantly less than what they are here in many of our towns. So, you know, yeah, it's expensive to live here, and some of that reflects back in where we're assessed. But, you know, I guess that would be my question, you know, kind of broadening this to Ruby and Lisa and Norma and Lori. I mean, is there anything, you know, department-wise as department heads that you think we ought to be focusing in on moving ahead? Are there any changes to the budget process itself, for instance? I know we're going to be cleaning contracts up for the most part and so on. Anything there that you're thinking about?
I would say in the coming year, we are, and by we, I mean Norma, and
The royal we.
and the new budget director and Samantha are going to be delving more into the capabilities of the software that we have and trying to tie it to program objectives and outcomes, and also tie it to the objectives that will be chosen in the county's strategic plan, so that to try to tie in all of these efforts, so that we can, and the legislature can more directly tie funding to strategic priorities that we're trying to advance. So that's one area that I'm looking forward to in the coming year. And also the results-based accountability. Norma and Bridget are working to try to tie that, you know, all of the efforts that have been put forth in that to date we've been encouraging departments to stick with us, because this, the software that we're using is going to help to tie that together, hopefully in a very user-friendly way that will inform the public more about what our tax dollars are going toward, what services we provide. And the whole OpenGov software will be hopefully able to be used in that way with more public interaction. So those are the things that come to mind immediately for me.
I've got a question
Go ahead.
based on that, and it's probably an all of the above type answer, but thinking of budgeting toward strategic objectives that you come forward, are you thinking that in terms of for over target requests or increases, or are you actually considering some type of alignment through the targets within the departments and programs?
I would say all of the above. And I think that, I think it will be, I hope that it will be straightforward to be able to provide those linkages and tie-ins.
You know, I've voiced in the past that we really have never stepped back to look at the targets that a lot of those department programs were given 25 years ago or more, and I've always wondered if that's something that's due for a revisit, especially in the context of the strategic.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like that, this whole general topic is something that makes for a good committee goal.
Well, I'm glad that you asked about this, Lee. I think we should probably hear from Ruby and Lori, too, about what they might need from us. So we'll start with Ruby.
Okay, just a few things on our list of things is to continue with civil service changes as far as having more training and experience exams versus the competitive exams, or I know for cities, the HELP program is continuing, but we are making, the counties were excluded from that. So we want, the NISAC is making some communication, so we just want to support that effort where more of our difficult to recruit positions we're eliminating the actual exam for. So we want to continue in that effort and any other pilot programs that the state is sponsoring. So we may need some advocacy from the legislature for those. We're also embarking on a year of position classification, going back through all of our job descriptions, updating, eliminating those that we don't use, in an effort to make it basically updating everything. We have on our training and development for leaders. So our training and development fund is pretty robust, and we've done a great job last year. I said spend every penny to make sure that people who have requested training opportunities can take advantage of them. And then investigating ways to enhance our benefit packages. All the time in recruiting is not necessarily all the time about the salaries. And we know in some areas we cannot compete with salaries. But if we can enhance our benefit packages, maybe our recruitment difficulty will lessen. So that's just off the top of my head for right now. I'm sure there are more things, but we'll get there.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How does this relate to the pay equity study work that we did over the past year, market studies?
That provided a foundation or a basis from which to start. And we did that with the blue-collar negotiations. We're working on the white-collar negotiations. Once we finish the white-collar, then we will proceed to use that compensation analysis for management and confidential.
We've pretty much kind of eyeballed the dollars to effectuate those positions identified through the study, the compensation studies.
As a part of negotiations.
Continuing.
So it's continuing.
Process.
And again, it provided the basis for. So.
Work's not done.
Work's not done at all. And that's sort of the impetus also for the position classification, because a lot of the positions may have been perceived out of alignment because they're not exactly comparing apples to apples when we're going into market data. So we need to redo a lot of that.
Okay, any other questions for Ruby? Okay, Lori, you're up.
So the first three that just jumped in my mind when you said that was, I think we've made great progress on procedures. I think there's more work to be done on some of the policies and procedures, particularly in clarifying some gray areas that I know, at least for the finance staff, sometimes have difficulty enforcing those policies when things can be interpreted differently. So I'd like to see that. I think OpenGov has greatly enhanced our software capabilities, and I'd like to see that extend to other areas. For example, OpenGov has a procurement module, and I'd be interested in looking at something like that that might tie in, and maybe down the road, the finance as well. And also, I think that an opportunity should be given to look at appropriate staffing levels. I think in some areas, we are understaffed and need some help. And those are the three that jumped into my head.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Rich?
Yeah, just listening to everybody, it would be, maybe it would be useful for this committee to get presentations on training, on what is our training program, and then on the budget software, just tell us how it's going. And I'm thinking that we could be involved with GO on creating some sort of communication piece for a public understanding of tax and finance. The spreadsheet, I think everybody's now gotten this, but GO had it. I don't know if anybody who's not on GO, have you seen this?
Saw the email. I haven't had a chance to study it yet.
It's a little bit daunting, but there's a tremendous story in here, and I think the general public has no idea of it, that there's been such a concentration in talking about tax rates, and you can tell a very good story with tax rates, but what you really want to talk about is how much money is each municipality spending, and you look at the change in spending levels, and it's kind of shocking what's happened in some of these governments, not us. It would be interesting to add school districts too. It's a more complicated story there because some of the school districts overlap county boundaries, but
they're also the biggest taxing, they're the biggest piece of your tax bill.
Yeah.
We always get blamed for it.
And, I'm thinking that if we put together some sort of public training piece, that would serve a couple different purposes. One we'd have a pathway for people who did want to understand our tax and finance issues, a way to do it with perhaps some more accessibility than we have now. But it might also interest people in 2 years from now for running for county legislature, that we should not have uncontested races. And if you look at these numbers, there's reasons to run for office, and people aren't running. So I think there's that. I had one other thought, which is we spend a lot of time looking at our sales tax and our property tax, and we should, but a lot of the money we manage is pass-through and grants, pass-through from the federal government. And I see some of that go by, but we don't really focus on it. And in fact, the grants we approve piecemeal. So I really have no understanding of how much money we process through grants. And given the conversation we had and the money we put in the budget for 2023, and I believe that carried over in 24 to hunt grants, it would be useful to maybe get a report, with the expected grants that seem to come through as a matter of course, matching money, all the different kinds, but I don't know if that would be a tremendous amount of work, but I don't think as legislators we see that very clearly at all.
And we don't see the reimbursement pieces often. I had no idea how much money DSS was getting reimbursed for until we suddenly got 2 million something dropped in our lap a year and a half or so late, which was nice. Thank you, Albany. But I have no idea how any of that works.
And then you see something like the FMAP, stuff where suddenly we're in great pain and we didn't see it coming, or at least I didn't. So I think if we're looking for goals for 24, this would be one of them, to get a better understanding of grants.
Well, and I kind of like what Rich is suggesting here, and I've said it right along that, you can't just look at the county tax rate in a vacuum. It's that combined tax rate that's affecting the taxpayer that's out there. And I can remember a point in time when one of my municipalities decided to take a larger share of the county sales tax, or take a larger share, which changed the tax rates, and it was kind of I didn't think it was I thought it was a little disingenuous move because it made one look better and one look worse when really it didn't change the overall amount that the taxpayer was paying in the end. And I don't know that the public really understands that. And again, when you add in the...
I didn't understand that. All I knew is it raised our tax cap to like 9% or something.
Yeah, so there's, you know, but the educational piece to the public, and again, when you factor in school taxes.
Yeah, we had a conversation at GO about that issue of does a town take its county tax or apply it? And I think we were all stumbling around the room a little dizzy because it's...
Must have been the mimosas.
I mean, I understood it when we were talking about it, but if somebody asked me to explain it, I'm not sure I could do a good job of it. And
Really end up going over to the far right side of that document to see what the overall tax burden is.
yeah, and it really does come down to what are you spending as a government? And that number gets sort of pushed to the side because nobody wants to see that. You know, but I will pick on one, the city of Ithaca. If you look from 2019, you know, or 2018, where they're at 23 million and they're at 30 and a half. You know, that's not very many years to go up $7.5 million.
Wait, 30 and a half what? Spending on
In
what?
their local, this is local city tax levy.
Oh.
So they're raising an extra $7 million over just a few years. You know, and I mean, that's in addition, they've seen a real growth in sales tax, and I assume they're getting grants, but.
And they're borrowing.
And they're borrowing, yeah.
That was the one local story that was noticeable over the last few days, and that talked about the city's debt. Not to pick on them.
Well, pick on them a little bit, you know, I mean, we want our colleagues to be fiscally responsible, and these numbers don't seem to say that.
Well, I do have some sympathy for the situation they find themselves in, where huge swaths of their property are not taxable.
That didn't change.
No, I know that, but the needs keep increasing, and the amount of property that's taxable does not. Although there has been quite a lot of building.
Their tax base has grown substantially.
Oh, well then let's just blame them.
Well, I mean, it's always tough.
I know.
Municipal finance. It's, you know, and as Jay Franklin said, government costs money. You know, you do need to spend money on taxes, but the rapid shift in spending, the public should really understand what that is.
Well, we do live in a fairly benefit-rich environment. We try to provide that at the county. I know the city tries to provide it as well. And there's one thing that always concerns me is when people come and talk about affordable housing being a right, food security being a right, healthcare being a right, clean water being a right. All of these things may well be rights, but someone needs to pay for them, and that's the piece that many of our activists seem to overlook.
Well, and property taxes, if you're trying to get affordable housing, you're really working counter to that goal when you spend a lot of money on the local level. It passes through to rent. So
Goes to somebody's got to pay for it, yeah. So, Mike?
A couple of things. One, we're talking about these grants, and I was reading about the deal coming together to move the debt limitation at the federal level. And part of that deal is a clawback of some of the ARPA or CARES money. And I hope we can make sure that ours is committed to such a state that they aren't going to come and say, well, you haven't spent it, so let's give it back. And I think there's, what, was it $9 billion they were talking about clawing back?
81 billion.
Was it 81 billion?
I think.
Wouldn't be surprised. But, you know, they give you the one hand, they take it with the other, you know.
I want to say that my recollection is that our county, our legislature, our committee, our staff devoted a lot of care and time to making sure that we did not screw up. So, and I mean, I guess.
All of which is great, but
Well,
I just think we have to be vigilant.
No, I totally agree, but I think we probably spent a lot more time and effort on making sure we did than other municipalities did.
Well, given that may pop up on the screens, it may be timely to see a overall report of where we ended up with ARPA.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea. Just
What's left and where we might be targeting the rest.
look how happy Norma is that she came today.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to bring up was we have Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee report to us here at the Budget Committee. And we usually get a nice little report, but I don't think we have a really good feeling about what's going on at their meetings and what their discussions are and things like that. So I'm thinking that maybe in the future we ought to have a joint meeting, for example, and talk about joint issues that are important to the county and to that group. They're not a standing committee, they're an advisory committee, but the work they do is pretty important.
Okay. Anything else? Well, if that's it, I mean, I think that gives the next committee quite a lot of grist for their mill, and I will see, I hope, most of you next month. And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership.